is up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. With me is a very well-known figure in poker, and we kind of have ties together. It is Mac Verstandig. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, and greetings to everyone out there in poker land.
Yes, I see that you are at the Bellagio Poker Room and playing a nine-handed mixed game, I'm assuming, a 9-18?
Absolutely. I broke quarantine, snuck into the Bellagio, and this will be the incriminating evidence. Or the fake background helps make sure that privileged documents not end up on Zoom.
Perfect. So everyone, I'm sure, is expecting that I'm going to have you on my show to talk about the most obvious thing ever, but it's not.
Nope, we're not going to talk about that.
We're not talking about it, honey. You know what we are going to talk about is what has taken over America since the quarantine has started, and that's online gambling.
Yes.
And I reached out to you and I was like, hey, do you know a lawyer that knows anything about poker? You know, maybe some online gambling. And you're like, I might know someone.
I know a guy who knows a guy, and he briefed me on a few things. And not to be sexist, there was a gal involved too.
I don't want to know the details about those things. I want to talk about poker. So I want to kind of do a timeline of events, and I have this like very vague timeline. If maybe you could fill in the gaps for me, or so in the 90s, and it looks like mid 90s, something of online sort of started, but playing, I believe, somewhat legally happened in 1998 with Planet Poker.
Yes. Well, let's agree that somewhat legally may not be the most descriptive of terms, but it wasn't as illegal then as it would be later.
Okay, so then we'll go around 2001. There was over $82 million of revenue made from online poker. And then it looks like up around 2005, it shot up to 2.4 billion. Party poker went public in 2005 also. I don't know if that was because of that. I think there was in 1994, there was a Free Trade and Processing Act that granted license for online gambling. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it was changed before 2011 because that's our Black Friday. But can you tell me what happened? Because it seems like the Unlawful Internet Gaming Act happened in 2006, but they didn't enforce anything until 2011. Help me clear the air. I want to understand.
All right, so let's start with this. Online poker has been illegal in the United States at all times relevant, other than what goes on in New Jersey, Nevada, Delaware, and Pennsylvania in the very, very recent history. The reason it's been illegal, going all the way back, is it's always been in contravention of state laws against unlicensed and unregulated, banked or raked gambling entertainment. However, you're right that before the Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act, the UIGA, which is this sort of hideous, ogre-esque beast that more or less ravaged our community on tax day too. Like, let's take a moment to note, poker players don't pay taxes for the most part, so how do you want to screw them on April 15th? Take away their websites.
So 2006, April 15th, they decided...
Well, no, Black Friday was April 15th.
2011 Black Friday. Okay. Because I know the Unlawful Internet Gambling Act was in 2006, though.
It was. It was attached to a ports bill. It literally got slipped in like the dead of night. Most of the United States Congress did not know they were voting to outlaw online gaming. This was like the ultimate Christmas tree ornament on a bill that had too many decorations. And bing, bang, boom, the next day, online gaming was illegal in the U.S. as a matter of federal law. But the UIGA just says, look, if it's illegal under state law, it's now illegal to move the monies associated with it under federal law. So it was relying on the fact that the states had already outlawed this inherently with their respective statutes.
So that's why it's almost like, from what I hear, it's not really illegal to play. It's illegal to move money. And a lot of banks will not allow their cards to move money towards unregulated, illegal gambling sites or anything to do with gambling for that fact, right?
Yes, I mean, a lot of banks won't allow cards to be used even in connection with perfectly legal gaming sites, just out of pure paranoia. The ultimate exemplar is TVG, is a perfectly legal online horse racing site where you can make pari-mutuel wagers. And I can tell you from experience, because it's possible I'm not the best handicapper, and I thus may have had to replenish that account a few times. It is a pain to do so with a piece of plastic. You can eventually get it done, but it's tough. It is, and I'm not kidding about this, it is easier to put $20,000 on a credit card in a brothel in upstate Nevada than it is to put $200 on an online gaming site that's legal and regulated in the U.S.
Both should be legal and easy, by the way.
Yes. So, yeah, the UIGA basically says, look, if it's illegal under state law, and it was, and it is for the most part, then we're going to make it an added crime to facilitate the transfer of monies, which is what the banks got nervous about, and rightfully so, because they don't want to get caught up in those crosshairs. And it's one of the reasons if anyone ever goes and tries to open any sort of corporate bank account to this day, one of the pain in the you-know-what questions on the form is whether or not the business has any involvement in online gaming. Banks just don't want to touch it with a 20-foot pole because of the UIGA. Now, you said it's not illegal to play online poker. The answer to that question is it depends where you are. There's a lot of states where it is.
So, okay. Just clarify for me, because it's from what I hear people talking about, there are distinguishing differences between playing a game online, having that game be raked, and then transferring money to and from that gaming site. So those are three separate things to me. Tell me if they are and which ones are illegal.
Yeah, so let's put them into buckets. You have the right categories, okay? Playing a game online, to state what I think is obvious. If you're just playing for fun and there's no money, have at it, right? You know, PokerStars has a US-facing client that is supposedly for play money only. If you're just going on there to hone your Badoogie skills against a bunch of other people, it may not be the best sim since you're not winning or losing anything of value. You know, you're going to get called down pretty light, but perfectly legal, have a good time. It's no different than playing.
Poker advice is on the next show.
Okay.
They're going to call you down light. Perfect.
Well, yeah, it's okay. You know, anyway, you are in. By way of anecdote only, in Nevada and California, an unraked poker game is not to violate federal law because federal law is premised on there being a violation of state law. So, Veronica, as we do this interview, I'm sitting in Nevada and you're sitting in California. When this is done, if we wanted to hop on Stars, pop open a home game, and play heads-up Badoogie at our usual 10,000, 20,000 stakes, and settle up via PayPal, cash, or whatever else, we're not going to have violated any laws. I mean, it's probably a bad idea. I'll own everything you have by the end of the game. But no, it would be legal. If you take a rake, it's going to be illegal in some form in every state. Now, in some states, the players are in trouble. In some states, just the operator's in trouble. I've always had this like super nitty, conservative, paranoid theory that Andy and Barney are going to get like ultra bored one day and arrest whoever's taking Opie's money playing poker and decide that there is a conspiracy or aiding and abetting that involves the players. And no small town sheriff or DA has done it yet, but there are some state laws that are written in a way that makes me really worried about it, where especially if you had a professional poker player who was sitting on a site in a raked game, just picking off fish who really can't afford to be picked off, I think they'd be okay at the end of the day. But yeah, the wrong DA, the wrong assistant U.S. attorney could try to throw them into some sort of conspiratorial web, and that might be messy.
So basically, with everyone playing on these gaming sites, they're essentially all doing something illegal right now, except no one's enforcing it. Is that what you're...
Well, let's back a few sites out of it. right? I think this is obvious, and I don't want to, I have no sponsorships, but let's do the obligatory. WSOP.com is a licensed, legal, regulated site. Borgata Poker.
And let's just say it's licensed and legal because it is paired with a brick and mortar casino. Is that true?
That is true. Both Nevada and New Jersey had that requirement when they started giving out the licenses. And I believe Pennsylvania is doing something similar, but I'm not as read up on that one.
I want to go back to this later, and I want to talk about the Venetian with their trying to get rid
I got
of
Sheldon
online
Adelson
gambling.
online gaming stories for you.
Yeah, awesome. Because I know
Yes.
MGM has paired up with an online site. And yeah, New Jersey, I had Katie Stone on my show and we were discussing that a lot. So
Katie, by the way, is spectacular and the best spokesperson Borgata Poker could ever have.
right. I love her. She's a great person. We just
Katie's
became
a
fast friends.
dear friend, and I think the world of her. But yeah, so when we say it's illegal, I want to be careful not to sweep those sites into it because those sites are perfectly squeaky clean. Also, again, not to pitch products that people aren't paying me to pitch. They're honest games and they're well run, right? We all see on Twitter where a certain site I won't mention seems to have problems with the same card being dealt twice on the flop or phantoms laddering tournaments or other bizarre oddities.
We all know which site you're talking about,
Yeah.
which site you're referencing right now.
So look, we all take swipes at WSOP.com every now and then, and I'm as guilty of that as anyone else. But it's a pretty clean, well-run operation. So give them credit for that. So yeah, when we talk about illegality, I don't want to sweep those sites into the pile.
We won't talk about it.
Okay, even if we get coffee later. I think most of what people are doing, though, does touch on some illegality. So I'll call out a couple names here. Poker Bros has gone absolutely wild in this sort of pandemic-laced era of ours. And one of the problems with Poker Bros and some related apps is not only are you violating potentially state laws by playing in a game and really helping people with it, but the way the money is getting transferred likely runs afoul of certain anti-money laundering regulations. Because these aren't just underground sites, but they're oftentimes fronts for criminal enterprises.
Right. So what do you mean the transfer of money? Because it sounds like the transfer is the way it is for every site I've seen.
Well, so let's use the legal example and juxtapose it with WSOP.com. If I want to put money into my account, and I don't know why I'd have to do that because I'm the world's greatest poker player who never reloads. If I want to put money in my account, I go through an automated teller or I go to a casino and I transfer money to Caesars Entertainment. No one's transferring money to Poker Bros. I mean, maybe you pay to download the app and maybe you pay for...
Oh, I see.
But you're giving the money directly to the illegal actor and you're often doing it in a way that helps the actor conceal it from authority.
To your host, yeah. So do you think
pyramid.
Sites like Venmo or PayPal will be held accountable if they figure out that there's, the money is being transferred through them that are being paid to the hosts that are running these private games?
They could be. I would be surprised if they were. To be held criminally liable, which is different than civilly liable, as a general rule, and there's some exceptions to this, it's the old Elwood's theory of you have to have mens rea, you have to have an intent to be breaking the law. Both Venmo and PayPal are pretty good about shutting down anyone's account where they suspect anything related to gaming. So you could say they're doing their best. Whether or not they could be doing more is another issue for another day. And yeah, the wrong federal agent on the wrong day might go after them, but I'd be surprised if they get pinched.
So let's go back to, you said that I put the things in the buckets correctly. And we talked about the transferring of money not being legal and banks in America not allowing their cards to be used for the transfer of money for the use of gaming. But so let's talk about the rake. Is the rake, you said the play is legal, but the rake is done now. So I know a lot of people who play Poker Bros and all this stuff. So they're not raking, but they're tipping. Is it still kind of the same thing?
It's the facade. And by the way, I mean, a lot of the sites, it really is unapologetically a rake. So what this comes from is there's this club model, which actually has a brick and mortar analog in Texas. And it can seem like I'm going off base here, but I promise this will make sense in a second. So pre-COVID, Texas started seeing a spread of card groups. And a lot of people rationalized that Texas doesn't prohibit gambling as long as it's not raked. So if you simply charge people an admission fee to a club
Right.
and voluntarily tip their dealer, you're not violating the law. Whether or not that's true is a question we'll know the answer to in like 3 to 5 years. There's going to be lots of lawsuits and lots of criminal issues. I'm going to the bottom of it. I think it's a viable theory, but no one sort of banged a gavel and made a decisive ruling yet. This whole tipping thing is somewhat of a perverse cousin of that, which is you're not really being raked, you're tipping, but it's in a much more compulsory fashion. It's often done as a percentage of wins or losses. And a lot of the apps are raking you just point blank. I think it's almost impossible to make that argument in the app context. But again, if you set up a home game on Stars, you play with friends in states where an unraked game is legal, and whoever wins decides that they're going to, give 10% of their winnings to charity as, the faux rake, that's innocuous. If they decide they're going to, do something of nominal consideration to thank whoever set up the game, not ideal, but probably innocuous.
Okay. So tell me, now I know that, Poker Bros and all these other apps are unregulated, and a site like ACR. I'm confused with ACR. I know that they are unregulated, but what exactly does it mean to be unregulated? Because it seems to me from an outside perspective that they're running legally. They must have their servers and their home base be off American land, I'm sure.
Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Home of fine cigars and ACR.
Cage matches and all.
Yeah.
So talk to me about why they're unregulated, what that means to be unregulated.
Sure. So let me start with this. I don't know anything about Costa Rican law. I could not tell you whether they're operating there legally or not, and I don't want to overstep my bounds. I assume they're legal, otherwise it would be low-hanging fruit for local authorities, but who knows?
But from America playing on their site.
It's illegal.
Okay.
They're operating illegally in the United States. Period. Heartbreak.
Is it something that they can control? Like, hey, Americans, we can't have you playing on our site because it's illegal for you, but they just turn a blind eye? Absolutely.
And you can look at some of the European poker sites that do a really good job of geofencing American players. Poker Stars non-play money client comes to mind. Run It Once is a new player on the field that comes to mind. I promise you, you cannot log on to Run It Once from Wichita, Kansas and play any sort of moneyed game, raked, unraked, or otherwise. What ACR is doing is not uncommon. They are filling a black market void where there is no legal product and where the government's not going to regulate. They are not unlike the bootleggers of the 1920s, except they have this really kick-ass advantage, which is the 3 best bootleggers in town all got their ass thrown out by the DOJ in 2011. So now they're left with sort of a monopoly. There's a couple of other competitors. One Russian site comes to mind. Other people don't necessarily want to enter the scene because they've seen what happened to the 3 who got their ass thrown out of town.
And you're talking about Full Tilt, Ultimate Bet, and Poker Stars?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I think it's Absolute Poker, Full Tilt.
I think UB and Absolute were somehow together there toward the end.
Okay. Yes, I forgot about that.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are the 3 victims of Black Friday. The fact that ACR and Bovada didn't get picked up on Black Friday is sort of astonishing. And I think ACR and Bovada both have changed names a few times over the years and were previously known under other monikers. But yeah, so they're a black market operator. They're furnishing a service that there's a very high demand for. and it's illegal.
And this,
They're not here.
the CEO of ACR, if he flies into the United States, like, how illegal is it what he's doing? Is he going to get in trouble if he comes back to the States?
So I don't know if there is any sort of sealed investigation. And I don't want to create speculation by saying that.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. U.S. Department of Justice is really good about the fact that they keep criminal investigations pretty damn quiet unless and until an indictment is unsealed. If he was my client, and he's not, would I tell him that so much as changing planes in Miami is just suicidally idiotic? Yeah, I would. I mean, if if a grand jury somewhere indicted him and it hasn't been unsealed because they're waiting to nab him, the moment he touches customs and immigration, yeah, he's going to get taken in, he's going to get processed. But I don't know if that's happened. The DOJ seems to have been asleep at the switch for 9 years. And if they haven't pursued this at all, and there is no investigation, there is no indictment, he could show up in Miami, have a mojito on Calle Ocho, run around town signing up new players, and head back to Costa Rica with, an I Love Miami t-shirt. But he's flouting it. I mean, he's flouting it really badly, too. They are so obnoxiously unapologetic about what they're doing. Like, general rule, if you're running a criminal enterprise, don't have Tom Brady be your spokesman for a day. That calls a lot of attention to things.
I was really shocked that he was able to get that big celebrity tournament going, and all these celebrities are playing on an illegal site, and my jaw was on the floor.
I was flabbergasted. I will say this, they seem to have done it in a way that the celebrities did not violate the law, because there was no prize and the money went directly to the charity. It did not go through ACR's hands. So I don't want to accuse, what's he going by now, Tampa, or whatever the nickname du jour may be. I don't want to accuse him of anything illegal. I don't think it's fair. But yeah, that was great PR for ACR. And I'm stunned that their respective agents and handlers let them do it. I can only imagine that Hollywood's best lawyers had COVID that day.
So I have a question for you in regards to these sites. So you were telling me that worldseriesofpoker.com has like a squeaky clean site. And so to me, that means they're regulated. And I'm curious if you know what part of that regulation covers making sure that a table isn't full of bots and like someone like me just ends up losing everything because of bots, or people potentially playing in the same room, multiple people. You've seen those videos online. What accountability do they have to maintain make sure that the software is running clean and there's integrity in the game?
So let's use Borgata Poker as an easier example, only because it operates in one state and thus only has one regulator, whereas WSOP.com answers to multiple regulators.
Okay.
So let's take Borgata Poker, which operates in New Jersey. They are regulated by the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement, and they're subject to the statutory code of New Jersey and the regulations promulgated thereunder. And amongst the many, many things in there are requirements that they have reasonable protocols in place to ensure that people are in New Jersey. They have reasonable protocols in place to make sure each registrant is a bona fide and real person. And they have reasonable protocols in place to avoid bot-type software. Is it perfect? On a couple of the items, yes. On a couple, no. They're actually really close to perfect with their geofence. Sheldon Adelson spent a significant sum of money trying to get someone to illegally log into a few of those sites from out of state to more or less shame them and bring them down, because Sheldon Adelson believes the internet is a series of tubes out to get us all. And he failed. He failed magnificently. I worked later on with a couple of the people who he was going after on unrelated fronts, and they have remarkable stories about seeing their systems overwhelmed with people trying to log in from Omaha, Wichita, Detroit, etc. So the geofence is pretty darn good. Making sure that a real person's registered for each account is also pretty darn good, because they have identity verification. So let's talk about bots, because that was your question. They're pretty savvy, and DGE is pretty savvy. DGE is the Division of Gaming Enforcement. in making sure that they are sufficiently invasive of your computer to block you from having a lot of things running. Does that mean that it is flawless? No, right? Could I log on as me and have a much better, well, in this hypothetical, we'll pretend someone could be a better poker player than me. Could I log on?
Just pretending.
Right? And have someone else over my shoulder tell me what to do? Sure. Are there plentiful stories, especially about poker players who live in houses together, where, someone will go out to dinner and have their friends play for them? Absolutely. But that's different than bots. I think that's less of a scourge on society. Now, how much collusion can there be? I run into this all the time when I'm on WSOP.com. I won't name the person, but I have a dear friend in Nevada who seems to play a lot of the same events I do. And she and I end up at the same table all the time. And it occurred to me about a year ago that when we're at the same table, I normally pick up the phone and call her to razz her about her play. And at no point in time am I going to say, hey, I've got kings. But I guess there isn't a safeguard if I was going to say that, right? If we were colluding, it would be hard to show. So
I think
it was a concern.
I think in this day and age, my bigger concern would be bots. And I feel like it's always a cat and mouse game with technology. So the criminals tend to be 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone else. I'm serious. I think if there's a leak, they're going to take it. I think some of these criminals are amazing programmers, and that's what makes them good criminals, especially in this day and age. And they could have a whole bot system. And the one way I think, being in tech, we could figure out that there are bots is look at the rhythm of play, look at the mean of a normal person versus this particular player. Are they an outlier? How many big blinds are they winning per hour? Are they winning in spots where most people are not winning? I don't know. I have this way of detecting patterns. I don't know if you know that.
No idea what you're speaking of, where this could ever have come up, but we'll see.
Yeah, so I just think that there could be a bot problem in the technology. I'm not sure if there's technology out there, like an algorithm that can pick up patterns when play is near perfect.
I'm sure. I mean, look, we ran into this with Neo back in the day. Now, that wasn't a bot. That was a super user, which is obviously a distinct difference. And one of the ironies is if you're a super user, your play is not perfect. Your play is actually deeply, deeply, deeply flawed, but your win rate will be closer to perfect. I agree with everything you said, right? The underworld is often 2 steps ahead of law enforcement, and the technology may be there. I will say, at least with WSOP.com, one thing that comforts me is the poker community is a relatively incestuous and insular world. And on any given night, if I log on and see, who the top 3 or 5 usernames were in a given tournament, I generally know who most of them are. I generally know they are good poker players. Now, I'll give you the flip side to that, and I'll be careful not to name someone here for legal reasons. Out of the blue, some random player no one had ever heard of won I think it was a Scoop event, it may have been a WCoop event, a few years ago. It was just this random boy in this random town somewhere in Europe. Never seemed to have played online poker before. Really nothing to go on there, and he won it. And it looks an awful lot like it was a US poker player with a VPN line. And a lot of us are pretty sure we know who it was. But we're not going to speculate on your show because I don't want you to get in legal trouble and have me be a witness. That'd be bad.
I think the one benefit we have in poker is that we're still a small enough community that we all kind of know each other. Anyone who's making moves or is really good, we know who that person is. And because of the World Series of Poker, most of us show up and show our faces to the world. And so we all know we all know handles, and we're sleuthers too. So we can track down whose handle belongs to who.
The poker community is undefeated when it comes to online sleuthing.
Oh yeah, the 2+2 analytics team is second to none.
Uh,
They will always have my heart.
Quantico's got nothing on those boys and girls. But
Yes.
you're right. I mean, with the exception of the summer, we all go to summer camp together every year. We know the people who
Well,
don't, or at least we know someone who knows them. But
not this year.
right. I guess the flip side to that is we also know that some of the people who we know well are not good and upstanding people. There are members of this community who may not be paradigms of moral integrity. And that does always make you wonder, what they could be up to. Look, Russ Hamilton was an accepted member of the poker community. He went to poker summer camp with the rest of us for a while. And he ran what appears to be the largest fraud in poker history.
So talk to me about the legalities. So let's say I'm an exceptional programmer and I develop my own software to be able to do real-time solving. It's what I came up with, and it makes me an exceptional poker player, and it's very GTO. So tell me how legal that is.
You're probably okay from a criminal point of view. The question's going to be when you download your legal online poker client, so WSOP, Borgata, whatever it may be, what terms of service are you agreeing to? And is your software going to run afoul of any of them? Now, I'm assuming your software is as you described it. It's based on your analytics. It is your work product, meaning it's not collusive, right? It's not hacking into other people's computers. You're not exposing a flaw in the program that allows you to see other users' cards. You're not doing anything like that. I think in that prism, it's going to be mostly a terms of service question.
So humor me.
Of course.
I'm always thinking about, in my own work, I always think about the updates or the changes I make to the software. What is it going to mean in 2 years or 3 years? What am I going to do to make sure that I'm able to continue working in 5 or 10 years? Like, what kinds of things should I be doing? I also think about online poker in the future as being, I think someone like me I already think that I'm not able to compete in poker in general because I haven't spent enough time studying in the real world. But I will say that I think poker will eventually evolve to the people who are the savviest coders, who have the greatest like real-time solving capabilities, who leave it all to the GTO strategy. And like I said, real-time solving, it's going to be like machine versus machine with a human host kind of thing, or being like the medium in between the transaction.
I don't think you're wrong. So for reasons that will become public in a few days, I reread a couple of days ago 40 Years a Gambler on the Mississippi, which is the memoir of George Duval, who was the first great 19th century riverboat gambler in the US. And he basically talks about going around and cheating everyone and their mother, including Canada Bill, out of faro games, 3-card Monte games, and a number of other things. And there are some fleeting references to poker games, and there's some fleeting references without using the phrase blackjack to what looks an awful lot like a blackjack game. And it is clear that other than brute force and card mechanics, this guy, who was the preeminent hustler of his time, had no fucking idea what he was doing. And I sort of mentally contrast that to Bringing Down the House, which is Ben Mesrich's book about the MIT blackjack team. And, you fast forward 100 years and change, and you have whiz kids looking at roughly the same game and finding a better way to solve it. And that's been the progression. And no one today playing blackjack, poker, or I don't think faro is still dealt, but faro, if that's your thing, is going on the George Duval methodology of this or the Canada Bill methodology of that. In truth, even with poker, the strategies we talk about aren't the ones that were heavily utilized in sort of the boxcar days of yore, the mid-20th century. They're the ones that your contemporaries and my contemporaries have refined and refined and refined.
Right.
I suppose at some point you get closer and closer to a level of perfection. I like to think the beauty of poker is you'll still always have an excuse to stare a tourist in the eyes and wonder if they're really betting their last welfare check or if they can afford to lose the pot if you raise. But yeah, you'll get closer and closer to solved. And that's happened with other games over time. And computers are going to be the framework in which we run those trials and errors. And that means online poker is probably the most logical testing ground because your computer's already open, your screen's already on. Why not go onto that free play site or even that money site and see if little Billy in Arkansas can beat your new strategy?
Yeah, I typically, when I look at a tourist, as you say, in the eyes, it's always like, what the hell are you doing? Not really thinking about where their money is from. But yeah, I just think right now it's difficult for a person to be winning if they're not studying in live play, which is, I think, the best kind of poker, just shuffling chips and like the atmosphere and someone, asking for a deck change and you're like, why why are you so superstitious? But I think online will be someone, if you don't have an advantage of a strategy, at the very least, you're going to lose all your money. And then as we proceed, you'll have to know how to code. You'll have to bring your best A game in coding. And it'll be a Go AI versus Go AI matchup. And we'll have to eventually turn off the computers because they'll take over the
Look,
world.
I think that's true. And I agree. I still think, especially with live poker, tells will always have their place. So the tell that I'm always happy to give away, because I try to keep most of my tricks to myself, but one of my earliest observations, which I've shared with hundreds of people over the years, if you are playing in a live poker game and someone at the table orders breakfast, lunch, or dinner and is eating at the table, I realize that may never again happen post-COVID, but once upon a time, these things happened. The odds of them bluffing a hand while eating are disproportionately lower than when they're just sitting there playing. And it has to do with attention span and focus. And the fact is, you don't want to be in a pot if you can be slurping fettuccine down your throat in an obnoxious way that makes someone 2 tables over nauseous.
No, you eat your salad. Yeah, that guy's video.
Exactly. I've always wanted to see people just like Lady and Tramp it at the poker table. I'm sort of sad I didn't see that, but yeah.
I mean, we can attempt next year at the series.
There
It's
you
up
go.
to you. Let me know if you're available.
Oh,
we
yeah.
do play the same cash games at the Win during the series, which is how I met you.
That is how we know each other. So, especially since there are like online conspiracies about how you and I were introduced by some shady
I
underworld.
want to hear these. What's the conspiracy?
No, there's, in case you haven't noticed, there are some people on the internet who are not fans of yours or mine or Charlie Brown or Linus's. They really just hate all things good in the world. And there has been some quiet speculation here and there about you and I being put together by whatever evil, corrupting forces. And I think the messages are directly correlative to however much acid the person took or however many stray dogs they killed that day. But it is worth sharing the origin story. You and I met at the Win during the series playing 918 mixed games on, I don't remember what it was. I think it was like Raz Doogie or something when I sat down.
It is. I mean, I'm not too embarrassed to say that I would say 9 out of like the 25 games that we played are. I don't even know how many games we played, but I would say most of them I was like, okay, I don't know how to play this. Someone quickly explain this to me. Archie? What is Archie?
Oh, Archie's brilliant. But I mean,
Archie's fun. I learned Archie and it's fun.
It was a great time. And by the way, that game in normal times still runs at the Win a few nights a week. Yeah. It is run by a guy who goes by Coach, who, and I'm not making this up, has never coached anything in his life. He shows up wearing a different team's athletic jersey and hat almost every night. His closet has got to be full of nothing.
Is he a lawyer?
No.
Oh, okay. I played with a lawyer when I was there this last summer, and I thought I thought he was wearing a jersey, but then again, it's Vegas. Everyone's wearing jerseys. Okay.
Maybe. No, the only two people I've ever encountered who actually go by coach are the guy who runs the 918 game and Woody Harrelson's predecessor on Cheers. They look sort of like, to be honest.
So tell me, because I'm curious, you're so passionate about gaming. How did you get into poker and gaming, and what struck the curiosity?
Oh, a complete accident and social awkwardness. So I lack most social graces. I'm what you would call awkward and deeply introverted. I was just absolutely miserable in high school. Somehow got to college and like faked my way through 4 years and decided that being popular was fun, but then went to law school and it all fell apart. So I was at the University of Miami School of Law, and I wanted the other students to talk to me. And either because of body odor or just lack of social grace, none of them were going to do that. And the ones who were going to do that were clearly not the ones I wanted to be sitting around town with. So I discovered that some of them were going up to the Seminole Hard Rock to play poker. And I thought, like, I can learn how to play poker. And if I sit at a poker table with you, that'll sort of be social. And then I can tell my Jewish mother that I have friends and she'll stop worrying about me. So I started going up to the Hard Rock a couple nights a week. I think I knew how to play poker in the sense that I knew card ranks and betting, not any strategy whatsoever. And during law school, I fell in love with it. I got pretty good at it. My law school class was loaded. Like Vanessa Russo was in the class above me. There were 6 people from my class who were basically paying their tuition, hustling card games in Florida and up around the Mississippi. On long weekends, I'd run up to Biloxi and play the higher stake limit games there. And it started to mean the world to me. When I clerked for a judge after law school, I'd go up to Atlantic City on the weekends. And then even in private practice, I kept trying to play here and there. And I became passionate about it. It never really became part of work until my second year of private practice, which sort of correlates to Black Friday and is a whole story unto itself. But I will tell you, having spent about half a dozen years representing behemoth Fortune 500 companies in like 9 and 10-figure litigations, and spending the rest of my career representing poker players, I will take poker players any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I love that. I'm a big fan and advocate of being passionate about the work that you do, regardless of your income, and just finding fulfillment and happiness, because it's a long 40 hours a week. And you're probably working more than 40 hours a week. It's tough to spend that much time in something that you're not enjoying.
All right, but hold on. I know this is your show, but let's flip the script on you here. What is your poker origin story?
So I was dating a guy in my 20s for most of my 20s, and he would be we do. You know what? He was actually really a great. Not all of him was great to me, but like for the most part, he was like a pretty good boyfriend and set up some standards that I haven't been able to find since. Like he would cook and clean for me and make me lunch. And like, he was a really nice guy, but he used to play poker and he would be gone I didn't live with him ever, but he would be gone all night sometimes playing poker. And I would be like, what's going on with this game? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, no, really, it's just like a really fun game of strategy. And then people always say, oh, you were jealous and chasing him. I'm like, no, I went to the casino because I was like, well, if he's going to play poker, I want to play poker. And I went there and I saw, and I was like, oh, I was really disappointed. It wasn't that great. It was a little, smoky and.
Which casino? Like, let's name names.
Casino Yellowhead in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada.
Okay.
Little bit grimy. I don't know if they've renovated it since. So
I didn't know Canada was grimy at all. That's fascinating.
Oh, hella action in Canada. So I'll tell you the origin of my degeneracy. So the first home I bought, I was almost 27. And all my money went into this home. I literally had $50 at the end of each month to live off of. And so the woman who owned it before me left the satellite dish, and she left a lot of stuff in the house, and I had to like get a dumpster. But I left the satellite dish because I was like, one day I'll afford cable. But the funny thing is, the satellite dish worked for like 2 or 3 channels, and one of them was, because I was in Canada at the time and we have this heavy British influence, it was a British poker channel. And it was 24 hours a day of that old school British cash games with Tony G and Devilfish before he lost all of his hair. And then after he lost it, it was like some really old early 2000s stuff. And they had high stakes poker on there. And all I did when I'd get off from work before going to bed while I was eating was watch poker. And then I started, I took my first trip to Vegas after that, and I won every single sit and go I played. And I was like, I'm a professional. I'm so good at this game. And then it just started. And I lived 2 hours south of Fort McMurray, which is an oil sands place. And guys were dropping out of high school in 10th grade and going up there to do manual labor to make like $200,000 a year. And then on weekends, they would drive down to Edmonton and set all that money on fire. And I was at the River Creek Casino, just waiting with my hands open. Just come on, boys, bring it. I would just play ABC and I would make so much money. And I paid for part of my nursing with it. I did lose some too, it was a learning process, but then the game kind of passed me by, and so did life. So I feel like this is a new time in my life where I feel like I'm going to start liking poker again, because I've stepped away from the party aspect of it. And I talked about that so many times in other podcasts that I'm kind of waking up and processing grief and not having poker be this party thing for me, and go back to this enjoyment I had of this strategic game that I enjoyed. Omaha 8 being my favorite.
So Omaha 8 is the devil's game. And Omaha should not be dealt. But we won't get into that. If you want to be re-inspired, I will tell you, of all the random ass poker games I've played over the years, by far the loosest and most entertaining was a home game in a dude's, I guess I would describe it as a den. It looked like a basement, but it was above ground, in Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories of Canada. We passed on Royal, which made me think that we were just doing this to be stereotypical because, Canadian whiskey in Canada. But it was a hell of a good time, and they had no idea what they were doing.
I mean, that's pretty much in Canada. You just would not believe what got to the river.
Right.
And you're like, well, thank you for the donation. I appreciate you coming, and
that's No Fold'em Hold'em in its heyday was a lot of fun if you had any discipline. And Canada to this day has some great card rooms, and not just like the playground in Montreal. There's an adorable card room on Prince Edward Island. You got to pay $50 to go over the bridge, but you can get cheap mussels to make up the difference. And,
I have not been to Prince Edward Island.
Okay, you don't know what you're missing. I want to say Saskatoon.
My sister-in-law is from Saskatchewan.
Or Lloydminster. One of them has a great card room.
Look, there's great card rooms all across Canada. It is a lot of fun, and poker is alive and well in Canada.
I think we should try to bring poker to Nunavut. Like, that should be one of our post-COVID goals, is to open a poker room in Iqaluit. Like, that's the only thing they don't have. They finally got a KFC.
What's the population?
I mean, it's a couple hundred people. We're going to have to
I'm not opening up a card room with a couple hundred people.
We don't have a lot to do. I think you may be overlooking the opportunity and possibility here.
I would like for you to come up with a business plan and then call me later.
I'll work on it. I think the fact that we save money using Canadian dollars is going to be instrumental.
Well, and is there anything else you'd like to add to these? Any more degenerate stories you want to tell me?
I've got degenerate stories for days, but we should do this again some other time. What else? We got off of online poker. What else were we supposed to cover? I don't know. Follow the law, boys and girls. Don't break the law. And for the love of God, if you're playing on an online site, that's redundancy, that's not legal and regulated, don't put up more money than you can afford to lose, because you may lose it, and not just through gambling. You may lose it through 1,000 other scummy ways. Also, don't go on Twitter and trade your crypto for some stranger's online poker currency if you don't know them. It's not the oldest hustle in the book, but it's getting close. And, if you find yourself in equal loot and someone hands you a bottle of Crown Royal, assume we're running the show and pay your rake.
Do you want me? I am not joking when I say this. My dad came to visit me over Thanksgiving, which he does every year. So he gets
Okay.
two Thanksgivings
Very sweet.
because in Canada we have ours before it's before Halloween. And then in America, obviously November, and he brought me Crown Royal. And it's in my cupboard. I can show you. I have evidence.
I believe you with your Canadian roots. I was telling someone the other day that I think there's only 2 poker players who have ever seen me drink, and you are one of them.
Yeah, a mojito, nonetheless.
Yes. But
at
at home, when no one is around and I can hide my alcoholism in an appropriately American way, Crown Royal and Johnny Blue are the 2 drinks of choice. And I realize the tension.
So try Crown Royal and ginger beer.
Interesting.
Yeah, ginger beer isn't actually beer. It's a very strong ginger ale. I find it less sweet and more gingery, and it's, oh man, to die for.
Don't have that, but I do have High Life and actual ginger in my fridge, so we could get creative.
You could. I mean, COVID is the time to get creative. The C stands for creativity.
Okay, so I gotta tell you, COVID being the mother of all inventions, I came up with a new variety of 3-bean salad. I'm sure it's not new. I'm sure someone figured this out in Sicily 100 years ago, but I thought it was new the other day. And I'm the first to admit, I've never actually done crack, but I have to think the addictiveness is on par. I've come up with some really good meals and some really bad ones, but that's a conversation for another day.
Can you send me a screenshot of your recipe and I'll put it up when I'm editing?
Perfect.
I'm not kidding.
Okay.
What was the after effect? I'm just kidding. Well, thank you so much for your time and
having me.
Oh, I'm just so happy to have you. I didn't ask you because I didn't think that you would. So
for you, anything, you know that.
So kind of you. Can't wait to get
just
your
like
bill.
Macy Gray.
All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day and stay healthy, stay safe, wear a mask, and be good.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone out there, for watching.
You look very well, like very clean cut. I like it.
Thank you. I cut my own hair. It was an adventure. You're not supposed to use kitchen shears for that, but as long as you back it up with a razor, you're good.